The front office of an elementary school is a small room, and I had crossed oceans to stand in it. There was a laminated poster about kindness on the wall. There was a bowl of green apples on the counter. There was a woman I had never met standing beside the sign-out clipboard as if she owned it, and she was telling me I could not take my own children home. "I'm their mother now," she said. "You should call ahead next time." Her name was Corinne Vale. I did not know that yet. I knew only that she was wearing a cardigan I recognized, because it was mine, and that my son was sitting on the reading rug 12 feet away with his back to me, and that the office manager behind the desk would not meet my eyes. "You're not the contact on file," the office manager said. Her voice was gentle, which was worse. "I'm sorry, I can't release them to someone who isn't listed." I had been home for 2 hours. I had signed for rifles. I had signed for fuel. I had signed the manifest for a convoy of 17 trucks across a stretch of road where signing your name meant you were responsible for every soul on it. I could not sign for my own son. I did not shout. There is a voice that wants to, and there is a second voice, the one the Marine Corps had spent 10 years building in me, and that second voice said the same thing it always said. Stay calm. Watch. Collect. Do not detonate. So I set my hands flat on the counter, and I asked, very quietly, to speak with someone in the records office. That is where I met Maeve Dillard. She was the district registrar, a woman of about 55, with reading glasses on a chain, and the particular stillness of a person who has read 10,000 forms, and can feel when one of them is wrong. She listened to me for 90 seconds. Then she went to a filing cabinet, and she pulled a folder, and she laid it on the desk next to the birth certificates I had carried home in my duffel through 3 airports. She looked at one and then the other, and then she took her reading glasses off. "Ma'am," she said, "give me a moment. Do not leave this building." Her face had changed. I had seen that change before, on the faces of people who have just found the thing that does not add up, the round that is missing from the count, the signature that is one day too early. Whatever she was seeing in that folder, it had gone very quiet inside her, the way a room goes quiet before someone tells the truth. But let me back up a little. 7 months earlier, I had kissed 2 sleeping children in the dark and driven to the airfield to deploy. Piper was 7, Jonah was 4. I remember that Jonah's hand was warm and slightly sticky, and that he did not wake, and that Piper half woke and said, "Bring me a rock," because I had promised once to bring her a rock from every place I went, and I had a small collection on her windowsill, a stone from a mountain, a stone from a coast, a chip of pale desert stone in a jar. The deployment was a combat logistics rotation, 7 months, the kind of tour that does not make the news. I moved supplies, I moved people. I kept a battalion fed and fueled, and I signed my name several hundred times a week, and I was good at it, and I was proud of it. My husband Dorian and I had been married since the year I was commissioned. We had the ordinary weather of a military marriage, the long absences, the reunions that were half a stranger relearning your face. I thought we were tired. I did not think we were finished. That is the part I have had to sit with. For the first 2 months, he answered every call. Then he answered most of them. Then the calls got shorter, and the background of them changed. And one evening, I heard a woman's laugh somewhere behind him, and he said it was the television. I told myself it was the television. When you're 8,000 miles away and you cannot do a single thing about the thing you are afraid of, you become very skilled at telling yourself it is the television. In April, the photographs stopped. Dorian had always sent me photographs. Piper missing a tooth. Jonah in a dinosaur costume in the middle of June for no reason. In April, they simply stopped. And when I asked, he said he had been busy. And when I asked to video call the children, he said they were at his mother's, or asleep, or at a birthday party. I counted the days I did not see my children's faces. By the time I flew home, the number was 41. The flight home is a strange, suspended thing. You sit in a gray cargo aircraft with 100 other people who are all going back to lives that kept moving without them, and nobody talks much, and everybody's doing the same private arithmetic. Who will be at the gate? What has changed? What they will not tell you at first. The Marine next to me, a young corporal named Ruiz, showed me a photograph of a baby he had never met, born in his 4th month gone, and he stared at it the whole way across the ocean like a man memorizing for a test. I did not have a photograph. I had 41 days of dark screens and a picture in my head that I had built by hand, and I held on to it the way Ruiz held on to his. We landed, and there was the usual chaos of a return, The buses, the accountability formation, the sergeant major reminding us to go easy on ourselves and on the people who love us. Somewhere in that crowd, families were finding each other. I watched a girl of about 5 hit her father at a dead run. I watched a wife stand very still and then not still at all. I did not have anyone at the formation because I had not called, because I was going to be the surprise. I did not tell anyone I was coming home early. My unit rotated back a few days ahead of schedule, and I did not call because I had this picture in my head, a good picture, the kind you build to survive on. I would go straight to the school. I would stand at the classroom door at pickup. Piper would see me first, and her whole face would come apart with joy, and Jonah would run at my knees, and I would be the surprise, the good surprise, the one that makes up for 41 days of dark screens. I got to the house first, only to change out of the flight and drop my bag. My key did not fit the front door. I stood on my own porch and turned a key that did not fit a lock I did not recognize, and a neighbor I had known for 4 years, a kind man named Walt who watered my ferns when we traveled, came halfway across his lawn and then stopped, and I watched him decide how much to tell me. "Isabel," he said, "you didn't know they moved the kids to a different school?" "What?" I said. "Back in the winter," he said. He was choosing every word. "There's been a woman staying. I didn't know how to reach you." He looked at his own shoes. "I'm sorry. It didn't feel like my business. And then it did, and by then I didn't know how." "Walt," I said, "how long has the woman been staying?" He thought about lying to spare me and decided against it, and I have always respected him for that. "Since about Christmas," he said. "Maybe before. The kids seem all right, Isabel. I want you to know that. They're fed, they go to school. She takes them to the park. It's not." He searched for the word. "It's not neglect. It's something else. I didn't have a name for it. I had a name for it, but I did not say it on the lawn. I thanked him. I asked him to write down the dates he remembered. Anything, the moving truck, the new lock, the first time he saw her car in the driveway overnight, and he said he would. And later he did. 3 careful pages in an old man's handwriting that became one more brick in the wall we built. I did not go into the house. I got back in the rental car with my key that fit nothing, and I drove to the school. And I want to tell you that I already understood what was waiting. I did not. I still had the good picture in my head, the classroom door, the joy. I carried it all the way into the parking lot. Inside the front office, the good picture died in stages. "I'm here to pick up Piper and Jonah Fenwick," I said. "I'm their mother. I've been deployed. I'm home." The office manager typed. Her face did the thing faces do when the screen says something the person did not expect and does not want to be the one to say. "Can I see your identification?" I gave her my military identification card and my driver's license. She looked at them for a long time. "Ma'am," she said, "you're not showing on the approved pickup list for either child." "That's not possible," I said. "I'm their mother. Isabel Fenwick. Look at the last name." "I see the name," she said carefully. "But the contacts on file are the father and—" She stopped. She started again. "The father, in a Corinne veil, listed as mother." The room did a slow turn around me. Listed as mother. 2 words on a screen, and they moved the floor. That was when Corinne came in from the hallway with a juice box in her hand, and she saw me, and she understood exactly who I was, and she did not flinch. That is the thing I keep coming back to. She did not flinch. She had rehearsed this. She crossed her arms over my cardigan, and she said the sentence I will hear for the rest of my life. "I'm their mother now," she said. "You should call ahead next time." Behind her, through the interior window, I could see the reading rug. Piper was there now, too. She had seen me. And my daughter, who used to come apart with joy, looked at me and then looked very deliberately at the carpet and did not move and did not call out. And I understood that in 41 days, someone had taught a 7-year-old to be afraid of getting it wrong. I have been shot at. I have been mortared. I have signed my name on a line that made me responsible for other people's children. Nothing has ever hollowed me out like my daughter studying the carpet so she would not have to choose. The principal came out then. His name was Roland Beck, a tired, decent man who clearly wished he were anywhere else. "Let's not do this in front of the students," he said quietly. "Please, come back to my office." "I want my children," I said. My voice was steady. "I am proud of that. It was the only thing I had." "I understand," he said. "I do. But I have paperwork that says a court gave sole authority to the father, and I have a notarized document naming Ms. Vale as a parent. And if I hand 2 children to someone who isn't on that paperwork, I lose my job and maybe worse. Help me fix this the right way, please. Somewhere in the parking lot, a car door shut and Dorian came in, and for 1 second his face was the face of a man who has been caught, and then he rearranged it into grievance, which is what guilty people reach for when they have run out of everything else. You can't just show up, he said. You can't just appear and upend everything. Do you know how confusing that is for them? You were gone, Isabel. Somebody had to be their mother. I am their mother, I said. You were deployed. I was deployed, I said. Not dead, not gone. Deployed. There's a word for it. There are laws about it. His mother was on speakerphone in his hand, I realized. Marguerite? I could hear her thin voice saying, Dorian, don't engage her, don't engage, as if I were a stray dog. Marguerite, I said, loud enough for the phone. You held my son on the day he was born. You cried. There was a small silence on the line. Then Marguerite said, You left. A mother doesn't leave. I deployed, I said. You have a flag folded in a triangle on your mantle from your own husband's service. You know exactly what deployment is. You just decided it was more convenient not to. Dorian took the phone off speaker. That is the kind of man he is. He will start a fight in a room full of children and then step out into the hall to finish it in private, so that the record shows only his good side. I let him go. I was not there to win the parking lot. I was there to watch and to remember, and I stood in that front office and memorized every face. The office manager who would not lie for anyone, the principal who wanted a clean way out, the woman in my cardigan who had rehearsed her one sentence, and I filed them all away for later, because later was where I was going to win this. I looked at the phone, and I looked at the woman in my cardigan, and I looked at the principal who did not want to be a villain, and I made a decision that saved my children, although it did not feel like anything in the moment except surrender. I did not raise my voice. I did not grab my son off the reading rug, which every cell in my body was screaming to do. I turned to the office manager, and I asked the only question that mattered. Where is your records office? Maeve Dillard's office was 2 doors down and a world away from the front desk. It smelled like toner and old coffee. She sat me down. She asked me 3 questions, and they were the right 3 questions, which told me she had done this before, or at least had imagined it. When did you deploy? She asked. And when did you return? And can you prove both to the day? I deployed in November, I said. I returned this week. I can prove every day of it. I have orders. I have a chain of command. I have a flight manifest with my name on it. She nodded slowly and opened the folder. I'm going to tell you what I'm looking at, she said, because you have a right to know and because I think you're going to need to remember it clearly later. She turned the folder so I could see. This is the enrollment packet the district received in February for Piper and Jonah Fenwick. Transfer from their previous school, new contacts, new primary parent, and this. She slid a single page out. This is a consent form, parental consent to enroll and to change the emergency contacts. It's signed with your name, Isabel Fenwick, and it's dated the 3rd of February. I looked at the signature. It was a decent forgery. It had the shape of my name. It did not have my hand. Where were you? Maeve said. On the 3rd of February? On a base you can't pronounce, I said. 8,000 miles from here. I can give you the exact grid. I can give you the names of 40 people who saw me at morning formation. I did not sign that. I have never seen that page in my life. She was quiet for a moment. Then she pulled a second page free, a page with a notary block at the bottom, a stamp, a signature, a commission number. This is a guardianship affidavit, she said. It grants a Corinne Vale standing to act as a parent for school purposes. It's notarized. She put her glasses back on and read the small print at the bottom, the part nobody reads, the commission number and the expiration date, and I watched her face do the thing it had done at the front counter. This commission, she said slowly, expired 2 years ago. This notary was not commissioned on the day this stamp says he notarized this document. A living licensed notary did not witness this. Somebody used a dead stamp. She set the page down very gently, the way you set down something that is evidence. Captain Fenwick, she said, I have worked in district records for 19 years. I process transfers and custody changes and restraining orders and every ugly thing families do to each other through their children. I am telling you, as someone who knows exactly what she is looking at, that this is not a paperwork mistake. This is not a mix-up. Somebody built this. Somebody sat down and built this page by page to erase you off your own children. What happens now? I said. With the school, can you just fix it? Maeve took a slow breath, the breath of a person who has to explain a system she did not build. I can flag it, she said. I have already flagged it as of this moment as a suspected fraudulent record which freezes any further action on these enrollments. What I cannot do is simply hand you the children, because the front office is right about one thing. If there is a document claiming a custody order, I am not the one who gets to decide it is fake. A court is. But I can make sure this district does not release those children to anyone, including the man on this form, until a court sorts it out, and I can make certain that when a judge asks the district for the truth, the district hands over every page of it, certified, including the pages someone hoped I would never compare. She looked at me over her glasses. You bring me a lawyer and a subpoena, Captain, and I will bury them in accurate paperwork. It is the only weapon I have, and it is a better one than people think. How did you catch it? I asked, and you looked for 2 seconds. 19 years, she said simply. You stop reading the words after a while and start reading the dates. The words can be anything people want. The dates are where the lie lives. Somebody was very careful with the words on this and very careless with the dates, because they never imagined anyone would line them up against a deployment calendar. She closed the folder. They didn't count on the mother being a Marine who can prove where she stood on any given morning. For the first time since my plane had touched down, I was not the only person in the world who could see it, and I did the thing the Marines taught me. I did not cry, although I wanted to. I took out my phone and I photographed every page, and I asked Maeve Dillard how a person goes about proving that she is her children's mother. The next morning, I went to the legal assistance office on base, because when you do not know where to start, you start with the people who are obligated to help you, and a Marine's first call is always to her own. The judge advocate on duty was a captain named Rafael Ontiveros, a compact man with a flat, calm way of talking that I found steadying. I put the photographs on his desk in order. He looked at them for a while without saying anything. Then he looked up. Okay, he said. First, breathe. Second, listen to me carefully, because there is a right way to do this and a wrong way, and the wrong way will cost you the children even though you are in the right. I'm listening, I said. Your orders are gold, he said. You have documentary government-certified proof of exactly where you were on the date they say you signed that consent. That is the strongest possible evidence, and almost nobody has it. Civilians in your situation spend months trying to prove a negative. You can prove it with a stamp from the Department of Defense. We will get you a certified copy of your orders, your leave and earnings statements for those months, and a letter from your commanding officer confirming your deployment dates. That packet is a wall. Then let's knock the door down, I said. No, he said. That's the part you have to hear. Do not knock any door down. Do not take the children off any list yourself. Do not go to the school and remove them. Do not go to the house and take them. I know every part of you wants to put them in a car and drive. If you do that, you hand him the only weapon he has, which is a story about an unstable mother who grabbed the kids the second she got home. Right now, the paperwork is a lie, and you are the calm one. Keep it that way. Let the court be the one to move the children. When you win, and you will win, you want to win so cleanly that no one can ever reopen it. I sat with that. It was the hardest order I have ever been given, and it came from a man who could not make me obey it. But he was right, and I knew he was right, and being right is sometimes the only handhold you have. There's a law, I said, isn't there, about being served while deployed? There are several, Ontiveros said, and for the first time something almost like a smile moved across his flat face. The one you're thinking of protects service members from having judgments entered against them while they cannot appear. If he obtained any order while you were deployed and did not disclose your service to the court, that order is not just weak, it is void, and the way he got it is its own problem for him. Did he ever mention a court date, a hearing, any paper served on you? Nothing, I said. The first I heard of any court was the principal saying a court gave him sole authority. Then either there is no order, Ontiveros said, or there is one he built in the dark, and either way it falls the moment you shine a light on it. Get your certified orders, get to Nandakumar, and Captain. He waited until I looked at him. You did nothing wrong. I want you to hear a Marine say that to you today, because you are going to spend the next 3 months in rooms full of civilians implying that a woman who serves is a woman who abandoned her kids. She is not. You went where you were ordered and you came home. Everything after that is on him. I have thought about those words many times. Sometimes the most important evidence in a case is not a document. It is a person in uniform telling you that you are not the villain of the story someone else wrote. I need a civilian lawyer, I said. This is a state court fight. You do, he said, and I know one. She used to do this in uniform. Her name is Priya Nandakumar. She does not lose the ones that are this clear, and she will not let you do anything stupid out of grief. Go see her today. Priya Nandakumar's office was above a bakery, so the whole place smelled like bread, which is a strange thing to remember about the worst month of your life. She was in her late 40s, sharp and unhurried, and she read my photographs the way Maeve had read them. Slowly, from the bottom up, looking at the parts nobody looks at. All right, she said when she was done. Here's what we are going to do, and here is the order we are going to do it in, because order matters. She held up one finger. 1. We correct the school record. That is administrative, and it is fast, because the district registrar has already flagged a forged notarization, and school districts do not want to be the ones holding a forged custody document when the music stops. A second finger. 2. We file an emergency motion in family court for temporary custody and to vacate any order he claims to have. There is no valid custody order. There cannot be, because there was never a hearing, because you were never served, because you were deployed and protected by law from exactly this. He said a court gave him sole authority, I said. He said, Priya answered, people say, we are going to make him show us. My suspicion is that there is no order, or that whatever exists was obtained by fraud and by hiding your deployment from the court, which is its own crime. Either way, paper does not lie for long once you subpoena the people who made it. Now. She put down my photographs and looked at me directly. Tell me about your children, not the case. Them. Because when we walk into that courtroom, the judge needs to hear their mother, not a witness. So I told her about the rocks on the windowsill. I told her that Jonah could not sleep without a specific blue blanket and that Piper read 3 grades above her level and hid it because she thought it made her strange. I told her about the tooth and the dinosaur costume in June. I told her, and somewhere in the telling, I stopped being only a Marine building a case and became a mother again, which hurt more and which I needed. Good, Priya said quietly when I ran down. That. Keep that. That is what we are fighting for. Everything else is just paper. I had a mission again. It is a terrible thing to be grateful for, but I was grateful for it. A mission has steps. A mission you can do. The evidence came together the way these things do, in pieces, some of them arriving from directions I did not expect. The first piece walked up to me in a coffee shop. I was there to meet Priya, and a woman I half recognized was standing near the door with her coat still on, clearly waiting, clearly frightened. She was the front office secretary from the school, a woman of about 58 named Georgina Halstead, and she had a manila folder held against her chest with both arms. You won't remember me, she said. I checked your kids in for 2 years before they transferred. Piper always said good morning to the fish tank. She swallowed. I've been sick about this for months. I need to give you something, and then I need to go. And if anyone asks, I will tell them the truth, which is that I could not keep it anymore. She put the folder on the table. Inside was the original enrollment packet, the real one, the first version, before it was cleaned up and refiled. They told me to shred the first set, Georgina said. There were errors, they said. Ms. Vale brought a new set. I put the first set in the shred bin, and then that night I took it back out, because something about it was wrong, and I have been carrying it around in my car ever since like a coward. Her voice shook. There's a note. She left a note clipped to the forms. In her handwriting. I kept that too. Start clean. That phrase told me how much work the erasure had taken, and over the next week I learned the rest. They had not simply changed a contact card. They had pulled Piper and Jonah out of the school, where Piper said good morning to the fish tank, the school that had 2 years of records with my name on every line, and they had enrolled them fresh in a different school on the other side of the district where no one had ever met me, where there was no history to contradict the story, where a woman in a cardigan could walk in and be the only mother anyone had seen. It was not laziness. It was strategy. You do not transfer 2 settled children across a district in the middle of a school year by accident. You do it because the old school knows the truth and you need a building full of strangers. That was the part that told me it was premeditated, more than the forged stamp, more than the note. A forged signature is a single bad night. Moving your children to a new school so that the lie has nowhere to trip over, the truth is a plan with weeks in it. Somebody had sat with a calendar. The note was 3 lines on a torn piece of paper, and it said, "Use veil for mother on all of it. Don't list the first school. Start clean. If they ask about the dad's wife, she's overseas, not involved, not involved." I read those 2 words several times. Someone had written down, in her own hand, the instruction to erase me, and then she had clipped it to the forms and handed it across a counter to a stranger because she believed I would never come home to read it. People who plan around your absence rarely plan for your return. "Thank you," I said to Georgina Halstead. It was not enough. Nothing was enough. "You are not a coward. You are the reason my children come home." She cried a little, and then she left, and I sat with the folder and let myself shake for exactly 1 minute, and then I stopped, and I called Priya, and I said, "The secretary kept the originals, and there's a note in Vale's handwriting." There was a short silence on the line. Then Priya said, in the flat voice lawyers use when they have just been handed a gift, "Say that again slowly." The second piece I found myself in the phone records because I had one thing the coalition had forgotten I still had, which was access to our old joint accounts. Dorian had moved the important things, but he had left the phone plan in both our names, because paying attention to details is not the same as being careful, and cruel people are often lazy in exactly the places that matter. In the message logs, I found what the case needed, not the words themselves. Those came later, under subpoena, in a form a court would accept. But the shape of it. A river of messages between his number and hers, across the winter, dozens a day, and then a cluster of them in early February, the week the forged consent was dated, and I did not need to read them yet to know what week that was. I only needed to see that the river existed, and to hand the map of it to Priya so the court could go and read it properly. The hardest thing I did in those weeks was nothing. Ontiveros had told me not to approach the children until the court moved them, and Priya had told me the same thing in stronger language. And so for 11 days, while the motions were drafted and filed and the hearing date was set, I did not touch my own children. I want you to understand what that costs, because it is a kind of discipline no one trains you for. I knew where they were. I could have walked in and picked them up in 90 seconds. And I sat in a rented car across the street from a school at 2:40 in the afternoon and watched from a distance while my daughter came out the doors with her backpack, and I did not move, because moving would have handed the other side the only story they had left. Piper stood on the steps that afternoon and looked around the way children do, scanning, and for one terrible moment I thought she was looking for me, and I gripped the wheel and stayed. Corinne's car was in the pickup line. Piper got into it. I wrote down the time. I photographed nothing because there was nothing to photograph except a mother obeying a lawyer, and then I drove to a parking lot 2 miles away and I put my forehead on the steering wheel and I let myself come apart for exactly as long as it took a stoplight to change. And then I sat up and drove to Priya's office, because coming apart is allowed and staying apart is not. "You did right," Priya said when I told her. She did not say it lightly. I know it felt like abandoning them again. It was the opposite. Every hour you don't grab them is an hour he can't call you unstable. You're building the case with your patients. Now let me get you a supervised visit before the hearing, so a monitor can put in writing what a room looks like when your kids see you. She got it. 4 days before the hearing, in a beige county visitation room with a one-way window and a bored, kind monitor named Denise, I sat on the floor and my children came in, and the picture I had built on the airplane finally happened, 7 months and a lawsuit late. Piper stopped in the doorway. She was careful now, my careful girl checking, and then something in her decided I was safe, and she crossed the room and put her whole weight against me the way she had not done since she was small, and she did not say anything, she just breathed, and I breathed, and the monitor wrote something on her clipboard that I would later be very glad she wrote. Jonah was shy, he hid behind Piper, and then he peeked out and he said, "Isabel," with a question in it, my 4-year-old, calling me by my first name, because that was the word he had been given, and I did not correct him, because you do not correct a frightened child in a beige room in front of a monitor. I just said, "Hi, my Jonah. I brought you a rock," and I put a chip of pale desert stone in his hand, the one I had promised Piper, and Piper let him have it, and my son turned it over and finally climbed into my lap without deciding what to call me, and that was enough for one day. That was the entire war, contained in a boy deciding my lap was his, and behind the case, all winter, ran the other thread, the one I could not put in a folder, the deployment itself, the thinning calls, the televisions that were not televisions. There was one video call in March, the last one before the screens went dark, and I have replayed it 1,000 times. Jonah's face too close to the camera the way small children hold a phone, and behind him a woman's voice, warm, easy, at home, saying, "Baby, tell mommy at work you love her." And Jonah, 4 years old, confused, looking off camera at the source of the warm voice and then back at me, not knowing which face the word belonged to. Mommy at work. As if I were a place he visited. As if the woman off camera were the real one, and I were the version you talked to on a screen and then set down. I did not understand it in March. Sitting in Priya's office in June, I understood it completely, and it took the air out of me because it meant the plan had not started in February with a forged form. It had started earlier, in a small boy's mouth, one soft, substituted word at a time. Something else was wrong, deeper than the paperwork, and I was only just finding the shape of it. Priya subpoenaed the district, and Maeve Dillard did not flinch. She produced certified copies of everything, the forged consent, the dead notary affidavit, the transfer request, and she attached a records custodian's affidavit of her own that laid the whole timeline out in the dry, devastating language of a woman who deals in facts for a living. When a document is a lie, the cleanest way to kill it is to have an honest professional describe exactly how it fails to be true. The state's notary commission database confirmed what Maeve had seen at a glance. The commission number on the affidavit belonged to a man named Curtis Lattimore, who was Dorian's cousin and whose commission had lapsed 2 years before the date stamped on my children's paperwork. There were only two possibilities. Either a notary had knowingly stamped a document with a dead commission, which is a crime, or someone had used his old stamp without him, which is also a crime. Priya did not care which. Both roads ended in the same place, which was that the affidavit was worthless and that it had been made on purpose. We had a pre-hearing conference with the other side, the kind of meeting where everyone pretends to look for a settlement and everyone is really taking the measure of everyone else. Dorian had a lawyer now, a smooth man who talked a great deal about the best interests of the children and the stability they had found and the disruption my return represented. Priya let him talk. When he finished, she slid one page across the table. The consent form, the one dated the 3rd of February. "My client will testify she signed this," the lawyer began. "Your client," Priya said, "will need to explain how she signed a form in this county on the 3rd of February while she was deployed 8,000 miles away, a fact established by certified military orders, a flight manifest, and a letter from a lieutenant colonel." She let it sit. "We are not here to negotiate custody of children she abandoned. She did not abandon anyone. She was serving. We are here to find out whether your client would like to withdraw these documents voluntarily today, or whether he would prefer that a judge and possibly a prosecutor look at how they were made." Paper does not blink. I watched the other lawyer read the room and understand for the first time that his client had not told him everything. He asked for a recess. When he came back, he was careful in a new way, and I knew we were no longer negotiating. We were just waiting for the courtroom to make it official. In the hallway afterward, Dorian tried to talk to me directly for the first time. His lawyer was not with him, which told me it was not strategy, it was panic. "We can settle this, Stadin," he said. "You don't have to blow it all up. Think about the kids." "I am thinking about the kids," I said. "I've thought about almost nothing else for 7 months. You're thinking about the district attorney." "Isabel," he lowered his voice. "If this goes to a judge, it doesn't stop at custody. You know that. You could ruin me." And there it was, the whole thing in one sentence. Not think about the kids. Think about me. I looked at the man I had married, the father of a boy who had learned to hesitate about his own name, and I felt the last of something go quiet in me. "You ruined yourself in January," I said. "When you wrote it down, I'm just the one who came home to find it." I walked back to Priya. She looked at my face and said, "He offered to settle in the hallway, didn't he?" I nodded. "Good," she said. "That's a man who has seen the wall. Don't take it. A settlement seals the record. We want the record open, corrected, and true, with the judge's name on it, so no one can ever do this to you again." The night before the hearing, Priya came to my apartment to prepare me, and she was harder on me than the other side ever was, which is what a good lawyer does. She made me practice one thing over and over, which was not to be angry on the stand. "They want you angry," she said. "The whole story they built needs you to be the unstable one who came home and blew up. If you get up there and you are cold and precise and sad, you dismantle their entire theory just by being who you are. So when the judge asks you what happened, you are not going to perform your pain. You are going to give her dates. You deployed on this date. You returned on this date. You did not sign that consent because you were here, on this grid, at this formation. Let the facts be loud so you can be quiet. And if they ask about the kid, I said, about Jonah calling me by my name. She was quiet for a second. Then you tell the truth, plainly, and you let it land on its own. You do not decorate it. A mother saying, "My son hesitated before he called me Mom," in a flat voice. We'll break that courtroom in half, and it will be true, and you will not have raised your voice once. She packed up her folder. You spent 7 months keeping a battalion calm under pressure. This is the same job. 1 more day of it. Then you get to fall apart on your own time, and I will bring the wine. I did not sleep much. I ironed my uniform at 2 a.m, because pressing a uniform is a thing my hands know how to do when the rest of me does not. And I stood in front of the mirror and practiced saying the worst sentence in the flattest voice until it stopped shaking, until it was just true. We were ready. The hearing was on a Tuesday in the autumn in a family court that looked like every family court, fluorescent and worn and full of the particular grief of that building. Judge Cardigan Nyland presided, a woman of about 60, with steel gray hair and half glasses and no visible patience for theater. She had read the filings. You could tell she had read the filings because she moved through the preliminaries fast, like someone who already knows where the road goes and just needs to walk everyone down it. Priya entered my orders first. Certified copy of deployment orders, November to June, certified leave and earnings statements, a letter from my commanding officer, a lieutenant colonel, stating on official letterhead the exact dates I was overseas, and confirming that I had not taken leave in February and had not been within 8,000 miles of that county. Judge Nyland looked at the dates. Then she looked at the consent form dated the 3rd of February. Then she looked over her glasses at the other table, and she did not say anything, but the silence said a great deal. Then Priya called Maeve Dillard. Maeve took the stand the way she did everything, without drama, with her reading glasses on their chain. She identified the enrollment packet. She identified the consent form. She identified the guardianship affidavit. And then Priya asked her about the notary block, and Maeve answered in that dry voice that is more damning than any shouting. "The commission number on this affidavit," Maeve said, "expired 2 years before the date notarized on the document." "Meaning what, in plain terms?" Priya asked. "Meaning that on the day this stamp says a notary witnessed a signature," Maeve said, "that notary held no valid commission. A properly commissioned notary did not notarize this. The document is not what it claims to be." Judge Nyland leaned forward. "Who is listed as the notary?" "A Curtis Lattimore," Maeve said. "And who," the judge asked, "is Curtis Lattimore?" "The respondent's cousin," Priya said quietly from her table. The judge wrote something down. Judges writing something down is a sound I have come to understand. It is the sound of a fact becoming a finding. Then Priya called Georgina Halstead, who was terrified and who told the truth anyway, which is the only kind of courage that counts. She described being handed a second set of forms. She described being told to shred the first set. She produced the first set, the original, and she produced the note. Priya handed the note to the clerk, and the clerk handed it to the judge. And Judge Nyland read it to herself, and then she read it aloud, because some things belong in the record in a human voice. "Use veil for mother on all of it," the judge read. "Don't list the first school, start clean. If they ask about the dad's wife, she's overseas, not involved." She set the note down. She looked at Corinne Vale, who had come to court in a soft, careful outfit designed to say harmless. And the judge looked at her for a long moment over the top of her glasses, and Corinne looked at the table. Priya called Corinne Vale to the stand. She did it gently, which was its own kind of blade. "Ms. Vale," Priya said, "you told the school staff on the day my client came home, and I am quoting the office manager's statement, 'I'm their mother now.' Did you say that?" "I was their caregiver," Corinne said. "I meant it in a caring way." "Are you their mother?" A pause. "No." "Have you adopted them?" "No." "Did a court ever grant you any parental status?" "I was told the paperwork made it official," Corinne said, and I watched Dorian's lawyer close his eyes, because his client had just handed the other side the exact word. "The paperwork," Priya repeated. "This affidavit. Did you provide the information on it?" "Dorian handled the forms." "Is this your handwriting?" Priya held up the note. "Use veil for mother and all of it." Corinne looked at it for a long time. There was no version of this where she won, and you could see her looking for one anyway. "I don't remember writing that." "You don't remember," Priya said, "writing the instruction to list yourself as the mother of 2 children who are not yours. Take your time." I want to help them, Corinne said, and her voice cracked. And I believe that part was even true, in the small, self-serving way that people are true when the room turns against them. He told me she was never coming back. He told me she'd chosen the Marines over them. I didn't know. You didn't know, Priya said, that a deployed mother intends to come home. She let that sit in the fluorescent air. Nothing further. It is a strange thing to watch someone you have hated become merely a person who believed a liar. I did not forgive Corinne on that stand, but I stopped needing her to be a monster, which is a lighter thing to carry out of a courtroom than hatred, and I have been grateful for it since. And then came the texts, the ones we had subpoenaed properly, admitted through the records the way the map I had found became a road the court could travel. Priya read 3 of them into the record. She did not need more than 3. The one the whole case turned on was from Dorian to Corinne, dated the last week of January, the week before the forged consent, and it said, "Once the school has her as mom, the custody filing writes itself. Judges love status quo. We just have to make Isabel the stranger. Make Isabel the stranger." I heard my husband's plan to erase me read aloud in a courtroom in the flat, patient voice of a judge, and I did not feel triumphant. I want to be honest with you about that because this channel is about the truth and not about revenge. I did not feel triumphant. I felt tired and sad. And underneath both of those, very far down, a small, hard stone of something that was not quite peace but was pointed toward it. This was never about winning. It was about my children knowing which face the word belonged to. Judge Nyland did not take long. She found that no valid custody order existed. She found that the consent and the affidavit were fraudulent. Before she ruled, she asked one more witness to speak, the office manager from the front desk, the woman who had refused to release my children to me. Priya had subpoenaed her too, and I was glad, because she told the truth in a way that mattered. The judge asked her why she had not let me take my own children, and the office manager said, "Because the file said not to. I follow the file. That is my job." And the judge said, "And if the file is a lie?" And the woman said quietly, "Then I need someone like you to tell me so, ma'am, because I can't. I just have the file." I did not blame her after that. She had not been cruel. She had been a person doing her job inside someone else's forgery, which is how most cruelty actually travels, on the backs of decent people following the paperwork. She vacated everything Dorian claimed to hold. She ordered the school records corrected immediately to reflect me as the children's mother and lawful parent, and she granted me emergency temporary custody effective that afternoon. She ordered the forged documents referred to the district attorney's office for investigation. And then, before she rose, she said one more thing. Off the script, looking directly at the 2 people at the other table. "These are children," she said. "Not property, not leverage, not a strategy for holding a house. I have sat in this chair for 22 years, and I want you to hear me. You did not lose today because the mother had better lawyers. You lost because you built a lie around 2 small children and then wrote it down. Do not ever do this in my county again." The gavel came down. It is a small sound. It corrected the record of the world. I wish I could tell you that winning gave me my children back the way they were. It did not. That is the part the paperwork cannot fix, and I would be lying to you if I skipped it. Piper had learned to go quiet. For weeks after she came home, she watched me to see if she was allowed to be happy, checking my face before she laughed, and it took a long time to teach her that joy in this house did not need a permit. She still hid her reading. One night, I found her under her blanket with a flashlight and a book 3 grades above her level, braced for me to be angry, and I lay down next to her and asked her to read it to me, and she did, in a small, careful voice. And that was the night I got a little of my daughter back. Marguerite came to see me about a month after the hearing. I almost did not open the door. She stood on the porch, my mother-in-law, 63 years old, the woman who had cried when Jonah was born, and had then decided a deployment was the same thing as leaving, and she held a foil-covered dish, because that is what her generation brings when they do not have the words. "I brought a casserole," she said, which was so absurd and so human that I let her in. She sat at my kitchen table, and she did not defend Dorian, which surprised me. "I told myself a story," she said, turning her coffee cup without drinking it. "I told myself you had chosen your career because that story let me help my son and still sleep. When they read that note in the courtroom, I couldn't hide inside the story anymore." She looked up. "I signed nothing, Isabel. I want you to know that. But I said nothing either, and I have learned this year that those are not as different as I wanted them to be." "No," I said. "They aren't." "Will you let me see them?" she asked. "The children. I won't fight you. Whatever the rules are, I'll follow them." I thought about it for a long moment. There was a version of me that wanted to say no, that wanted her to feel a fraction of the erasure she had allowed. But my children loved their grandmother, and punishing her would only have punished them. And I had already decided I was not going to build my family on subtraction. "Supervised and slowly," I said. "And the first time you tell them I chose anything over them, we are done, and I will not warn you twice." She nodded, and she cried a little into her coffee, and it was not forgiveness exactly, but it was a door left open a crack, which is more than she had left me. That is the difference I kept trying to teach myself all year. I could refuse to become them without pretending they had not happened. Jonah was harder because Jonah was 4, and 4-year-olds do not understand fraud. They only understand who is there. For a while, he called me by my first name, the way he had heard the other woman call me, and once at a park, a teacher pointed at me and said, "Is that your mommy?" And my son hesitated. He looked at me and hesitated, deciding whether the word was allowed to be mine, and I had to stand there with a normal face, while my child decided whether I was his mother. I have carried heavy things. I have never carried anything heavier than that 1-second pause. That is the cost, and I am naming it on purpose, because the internet is full of stories where the good person wins, and the music swells, and everyone is fine. We won, and a small boy still hesitated. Both of those are true, and you do not have to pretend the second one away to be grateful for the first. The marriage was over. There was no version where it was not over. Dorian came to the porch once, a few weeks after the hearing, before the criminal side of it got serious, and he stood on the step, where I had once stood, turning a key that did not fit, and he tried the thing guilty people try last, which is to make it small. "I didn't think it would go this far," he said. "It went exactly as far as you built it," I said. "You wrote it down, Dorian. You planned it in January. That's not a mistake that got out of hand. That's a blueprint." "So what?" he said, and there was a flash of the real thing under the grievance. "You're going to keep them from me now. Get your revenge." And here is where I had to decide what kind of person the whole ordeal was going to make me. Because there was a version of me, standing on that porch, who wanted to take everything, who wanted to make him the stranger, who wanted to teach a small boy to hesitate before he said his father's name. I understood that temptation completely. It would have been the easiest thing in the world, and it would have been the same crime pointed the other way. "No," I said. "I'm not going to do to them what you did to me. They're going to know their father, supervised and limited, and by the court's rules and not yours, because you have shown me exactly what you do when no one is watching. But they will know you. I'm not building a lie around them, even a lie that would feel good. I'm done being lied to, and I'm not going to become a liar to get even." He did not have anything to say to that. Men who plan in January are rarely ready for a woman who refuses to plan against them in October. He left. The visits happen, supervised, by the rules, and I keep the rules even when I do not want to because the rules are for my children and not for him. That night I sat on the edge of Jonah's bed with the blue blanket, and I did a small thing that I want to tell you about, because it was the real ending, more than any gavel. I taught my son his own name. Not as a lesson, as a game. I would say, "Who's my Jonah?" And he would say his name. All of it. First and last, Jonah Fenwick. And I would act amazed, and he would laugh, and we did it every night until the name came out of him without a flicker, until it was simply, obviously, boringly his, until no one on this earth could make him hesitate about who he was or whose he was. I did not get the family I thought I had. I have made my peace with that, or I am making it, a night at a time, but I kept the family that was actually mine. 2 children, a windowsill of rocks, a blue blanket, and a mother who came home. It is spring now, a year, more or less, since I turned a key that did not fit. The children are back at their old school, the one where Piper says good morning to the fish tank, and my name is on every line of every form, the pickup list, the emergency contacts, the medical authorizations, all of it in my own hand, which I sign now with a small, fierce gratitude that most parents never have to feel. Georgina Halstead still works the front desk. She checks my children in every morning, and she and I do not talk about the folder in her car, but sometimes she squeezes my hand across the counter, and that is a whole conversation. The morning the records were corrected, I drove to the old school before work to re-enroll them in person because I did not trust a form to do it, and I wanted to watch a human being type my name where it belonged. Maeve Dillard met me at the counter herself, though it was not her building and not her job, and she stood beside me while a clerk entered each line. Mother, emergency contact, medical authorization, pickup, mother. She had me check the spelling of my own name on a screen, and I did, letter by letter, and I have never been so moved by the correct arrangement of 11 letters in my life. Anyone tries to change one of these lines, Maeve said. The system flags it to me now. I built a rule. She almost smiled. I don't usually build rules for one family. I built one for yours. Maeve Dillard sent me a note when the district finished correcting the records. It was 2 lines. It said, "The file is right now. It says what is true. I have kept it. Of all the paper in this story, that is the page I saved." Jonah sleeps through the night again, under the blue blanket, in a room where the nightlight makes shadows he has decided are friendly. Some nights he still calls out, and I go to him, and he says my name, the right one, the only one, sleepy and certain, and there is no hesitation in it anymore, and I sit on the floor until his breathing goes long and even. Piper reads out loud at the dinner table now, on purpose, showing off, 3 grades ahead and proud of it, and I make a great fuss, because a girl who hit her own mind for a winter has earned every bit of fuss I can give her. The Marine Corps selected me for a career course last month. I am still in, still serving, still signing my name several hundred times a week for things that matter. The forgery case is still moving through the district attorney's office, slowly, the way those things move, and I have made my peace with the fact that its ending is not mine to control. My part is done. My children are home. The record says what is true. Piper drew a picture last week, the kind children tape to a refrigerator, and it was a family. 3 figures under a yellow sun, a tall one and 2 small ones, and a pile of gray ovals in the corner that I recognized, after a moment, as the rocks on her windowsill. She had labeled us. She spells well. Under the tall figure she had written, in careful letters, 1 word. Mom. If my story has taught you anything, I hope it is this. They can forge your signature, but they cannot forge your children's memory of who came home for them. They can write you out of a file, but a lie written down is just a longer confession waiting for someone patient to read it. Stay calm. Keep the record. Refuse to become the thing that hurt you. The strongest answer to cruelty is not more cruelty. It is a mother who will not be erased and will not become a liar to win. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that quiet strength is still strength. Tell me in the comments about a time you refused to become bitter, because someone reading needs your words more than mine. And if you want more stories about courage, justice, and hope, subscribe and stay with us because there are more of them, and we are only getting started. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. It matters more than you know. The end.